So if you hear the name Maria Montessori, you probably picture, those quiet classrooms, child-sized tools, maybe some beautiful wooden blocks.
hmm That's the common image.
But if that's all you know, you're really missing the true revolutionary behind it all.
Yep, that's so true. For this deep dive, we've gone through the sources you sent over, and the mission today is really to unpack the truly remarkable journey of Maria Montessori herself.
Yeah.
She lived from 1870 to 1952.
Yeah.
We need to understand how the founder of this, globally recognized method went from being one of Italy's very first female physicians,
Which is already amazing.
right, to developing this whole system of education based on these profound, almost you could say, accidental scientific observations.
Yeah, the surprise isn't maybe the method itself, but where it started. We're looking at a professional path that began, believe it or not, in psychiatric clinics,
Right.
then moved into Roman tenement housing, and only then blossomed into this, global philosophy. She called it scientific pedagogy.
And that word scientific, that's absolutely key. The whole system really rests on observational proof. But maybe where the story has to begin is just her relentless determination even to get her medical degree in the first place. Hashtag #TacTacGenAI, the early career of a boundary-breaking physician.
You have to think about the context, right? Late 19th century Italy. It was just not a society built for ambitious women.
Not at all.
And our sources show she didn't even start aiming for medicine. Initially, she enrolled in an all-boys technical school, hoping to become an engineer.
An engineer.
Okay, she had to fight every single step of the way.
And her later choice to pursue medicine at the University of Rome, that was met with just outright hostility. She faced professional harassment simply for being a woman in that space.
Okay, here's a detail that tells you everything about her commitment, because her presence was considered inappropriate during dissection classes with the male students. Imagine that.
Wow.
She was required to perform her dissections of cadavers entirely alone, after hours.
Alone. And we even know how she managed the smell, the awful smell of decomposition and preservation chemicals.
Wow.
She resorted to smoking tobacco just to mask the potent odor of formaldehyde so she could actually finish her work.
That level of just sheer singular focus, it's
Mhm.
incredible.
It really is. And despite all that, she graduated with honors in 1896, became a true medical pioneer in Italy.
And her medical training, it seems, immediately shifted her focus towards a really marginalized group. Children with cognitive delays or disabilities. They were called phrenosphenic children back then. She worked at the university psychiatric clinic and Roman asylums between about 1896 and 1901.
And what's crucial here is she quickly recognized these children's problems weren't purely medical. They were, in her view, pedagogical, educational.
Ah, okay.
She was heavily influenced by the earlier work of physicians like Jean-Marc Gaspard-Itard and Edouard Seguin. They believed in training the cells, developing specific practical skills, like learning to walk properly or use a spoon correctly.
Yeah. So she didn't invent those ideas, but she took those maybe scattered ideas and applied them systematically. Is that it?
Precisely. She co-directed the Orthophrenic School from 1900 to 1901. It was basically a research school dedicated to finding effective ways to help children with these learning differences.
Right.
And she wasn't just teaching the children herself. She was training teachers and developing the very materials we now associate with the Montessori method.
And the results.
Stunning. The children in her model classroom, kids who had previously been completely written off as uneducable by society,
Yeah.
they later successfully passed the standard public examinations required for quote-unquote normal children.
Wow. That verifiable, objective success must have been the ultimate proof that the environment and the method, not some inherent deficiency in the child, was the key variable.
It was a profound vindication, yes. Though, it's important to note, this professional triumph happened during a period of, immense personal conflict for her.
That's right, we have to mention this. During this early work, her only child, Mario Montessori, was born in 1898.
And to keep her ability to continue her professional work, which would have been just impossible if she'd followed social convention and married his father, who was a colleague, Giuseppe Montesano, she chose not to marry.
A huge decision. This was really a necessary sacrifice for her career path at that time. It led her to place Mario with a wet nurse in the countryside during his early years.
It just underscores the profound, almost impossible choices required for a woman wanting a scientific career back then.
Thankfully, they were eventually reunited, and Mario later became her really indispensable partner and collaborator for the rest of her life's work. #tag2, the birth of the Casa dei Bambini and foundational observations.
So given that early success with children who had special needs, her decision to pivot around 1901 kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
It does. She actually left her medical practice to study more deeply philosophy, anthropology, educational theory, specifically looking to adapt these methods she developed for all children.
Right, broadening the scope. And that chance came in 1906. She was invited to supervise the education of young children living in this huge, new, low-income housing project in Rome, the San Lorenzo district.
Okay.
This led directly to the opening of the very first Casa dei Bambini, the Children's House, on January 6, 1907. These were children of working parents, typically aged maybe 2 or 3 up to 6 or 7.
So this was her new laboratory, essentially.
Exactly.
And instead of forcing instruction, she created what she called a prepared environment and then watched. And what she observed immediately started to upend centuries of educational tradition. What struck her first?
The concentration. It was astonishing. The children, when given freedom and access to these specific materials, would spontaneously enter periods of deep attention.
Deep attention.
Yeah, repeating activities they chose themselves, sometimes dozens of times.
Yeah.
She realized children naturally seek out work that satisfies them internally. It wasn't about pleasing the teacher.
Okay, but wait. The sources mentioned something really counterintuitive. They preferred practical activities, washing things, sweeping, dressing themselves, and her specialized learning materials over traditional toys, or even bribes like sweets.
Right.
I mean, you put a toy car and a little sponge next to a 4-year-old today, the toy usually wins, right? So, as a scientist, how did she interpret that preference for, like, cleaning?
She concluded that children aren't primarily seeking entertainment. They're seeking self-construction. They have this innate drive to learn how to master their environment.
Competence.
Exactly. Competence and independence. The practical activities provided a clear path to real, tangible skill. And that's where the spontaneous self-discipline came from. It was driven by an internal need, not by external rules or rewards.
Okay. And the most dramatic breakthrough, the one that really showed her method, worked for core academic skills.
That happened in 1907 with literacy. She introduced tactile materials, things like sandpaper letters that children could trace, and movable cutout letters for forming words. And she found that the children, working with these materials, quickly gained proficiency in writing and then reading, often far, far exceeding what was considered normal for their age.
That must have been a huge aha moment.
Absolutely. A verifiable, repeatable breakthrough. It proved her methods weren't just for specific groups, but were applicable across the board for fundamental learning.
And that led directly to the core design elements that, still define a Montessori environment today. The heavy, restrictive school desks were thrown out.
Gone. Replaced by light child-sized tables and chairs that the children could actually move themselves, empowering them physically.
Right. And critically, the role of the adult shifted completely. The teacher stopped being the sort of fountain of all knowledge, the lecturer,
The center of attention.
and became the observer and director. The adult's main job became removing obstacles, providing the right materials at the right time on those characteristic low, accessible shelves, and then respecting the child's choice to work at their own pace.
And protecting that work, this choice, this internal drive, it required time to flourish. This is why she insisted on uninterrupted work blocks.
Right, the 3-hour work cycle.
Ideally, yes, a minimum of 3 hours, to allow that deep concentration, which she sometimes called normalization, to really take hold. Independence, she came to realize, was the ultimate aim of education.
So what she built wasn't just a collection of techniques, it was a unified theory of education.
Exactly. And she called it scientific pedagogy, precisely because it wasn't based on, philosophical guesswork or just tradition passed down. It was based on rigorous, repeatable observation of actual child behavior.
So the scientific part was the observation informing the method.
Yes, it was an approach built not just to measure students, like with tests, but to fundamentally modify and improve the individual by aligning the environment with their natural developmental needs and tendencies.
Okay, so this leads us directly into the core tenets of how children learn according to her model. Starting with the first plane of development, which is birth to age 6, this is governed by the concept of the absorbent mind.
Right. The absorbent mind is a powerful idea. It describes the child's almost effortless, sponge-like ability to soak up information and stimuli from their environment during these early years. Language, cultural norms, skills.
They just absorb it all.
They absorb it all unconsciously at first. They're literally constructing themselves out of their surroundings.
And what guides this absorption process? That's the sensitive periods.
Exactly. These are specific windows of time where the child shows a special intense sensitivity or interest in learning a particular skill.
Like what?
Well, there's a sensitive period for order, for language acquisition, for refining the senses, for paying attention to tiny details, for movement. The prepared environment is designed specifically to have the right materials ready when a child enters a particular sensitive period. She also identified what she called human tendencies. These aren't stages, but universal, innate characteristics that guide our behavior throughout life. Things like our drive to explore, to orient ourselves, to work, repeat actions, seek order, be precise, and even self-perfection.
So the classroom should be a place where these natural human needs can be met constructively.
Precisely. Instead of
Yep.
fighting against them, you work with them.
So she had this detailed blueprint for early childhood, but her vision went much further. Education wasn't just for little kids. It was structured by these planes of development, covering the whole journey from birth right up to age 24.
Yes, a comprehensive model. So moving into the second plane, that's roughly ages 6 to 12. The child shifts from unconsciously absorbing the environment to becoming a conscious intellectual explorer.
Okay.
Physically, their growth tends to stabilize a bit compared to early childhood. But psychologically, the focus shifts dramatically towards imagination, abstract reason, developing a moral sense, and what she called their herd instinct, this strong desire to work and socialize in groups.
And this is where the goal shifts towards intellectual independence, right? Leading to the introduction of cosmic education.
That's right. Cosmic education is quite beautiful, especially when you compare it to how fragmented our curriculum often is today. It emphasizes the interconnectedness of everything.
How so?
It presents the universe and the world as a whole, introducing biology, history, geography, culture, not as separate boxes, but as one unfolding story. The goal is to give the child a sense of their place in the universe and the interdependence of all life.
Fascinating. And then the third plane, adolescence, 12 to 18.
Yes, the third plane, often seen as a period of great physical and psychological instability, puberty, and all that. But Montessori also saw it as a time of incredible creative potential and the development of a deep sense of justice and personal dignity.
So the needs change again, dramatically.
Radically. And because the needs change so much, she argued the educational approach must also change radically for adolescents, which leads to some pretty interesting ideas about what high school should look like. #, have my V, global impact, controversy, and legacy.
Okay, so when the results from that first Casa de Bambini started getting published, the reaction was pretty explosive, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely phenomenal. By 1912, just 5 years after the first Children's House opened, her method was already adopted or being actively planned for public school systems literally all over the world. The US, China, India, the UK, across Europe. It was a genuine phenomenon.
Her book, The Montessori Method, was a huge bestseller in the United States. And really influential figures like Alexander Graham Bell became strong proponents.
Yes. By 1913, there were apparently hundreds of Montessori schools already operating in the U.S. The initial enthusiasm was massive.
And that American enthusiasm kind of hit a brick wall after about 1915. This turned into a real intellectual battle, it seems.
It really did. The sources point clearly to the main criticism coming from a very influential progressive educator named William Herd Kilpatrick. He was a prominent follower of John Dewey.
Right. And what was Kilpatrick's argument?
He published a highly critical book basically arguing that the Montessori method was too rigid, too standardized by the specific materials. He felt it fatally restricted children's imagination, creative social interaction, and particularly free, unstructured play.
Okay, that's a significant critique.
A very significant one. The ensuing controversy really fractured the American Montessori movement. That, coupled with Montessori's own insistence on quite tight control over teacher training and certification,
Right.
meant that her presence in the U.S. became almost negligible for decades, really until a revival started in the 1950s.
She also faced major political pushback closer to home, in Europe.
Yes. In the 1930s, she started clashing seriously with Benito Mussolini's fascist government in Italy. There were issues over ideological control. The fascists wanted schools to promote their doctrines and financial matters too.
And that led to...
It eventually led to her exile from Italy in 1934. And by 1936, the Italian government had shut down all Montessori activities in the country.
Wow. So the political turmoil actually followed her.
It did. During World War II, because she was an Italian citizen, she and her son Mario were interned by the British in India as enemy aliens.
Intern? For how long?
For years, actually. but they used that time productively, further developing their educational methods, including refining the concept of cosmic education for the elementary years.
That period also seems to have really cemented her commitment to global harmony, leading to her philosophy of education for peace.
Absolutely. She became a passionate advocate for peace through education. She famously stated that establishing lasting peace is the work of education. All politics can do is keep us out of war.
A powerful statement.
And she was recognized for it. Nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times in the late 40s and early 50s.
Right up until the end of her life, she was still fighting. She once addressed UNESCO, declaring children the forgotten citizen.
Yes, the only population without rights, she said, enslaved by imposed school orders and intellectual rules that didn't respect their development. Still a powerful advocate.
So as we look at the legacy today, we do have to mention that caveat. The term Montessori itself is not trademarked.
That's a crucial point. It means the quality and faithfulness to her original principles can vary wildly from school to school globally. You really have to look closely at individual programs.
But the research, when it is implemented faithfully,
Generally, yes. Scientific studies continue to show favorable outcomes, particularly in terms of executive functions, social skills, and academic skills, if the program adheres closely to the core principles.
like the long work blocks, the specific materials, the trained observational role of the teacher.
Exactly. When those elements are strongly in place, the results tend to be positive. There's even research linking attendance at high-quality Montessori programs to things like higher adult well-being, greater self-confidence, and social trust later in life.
So we've tracked this really incredible journey. We've watched a pioneering female physician translate the profound concentration she first observed in marginalized children into this comprehensive global philosophy of human development.
Yeah, her life story just confirms that the revolutionary power of her method really stemmed directly from her scientific starting point, that careful observation. The goal was never just teaching facts or academic skills in isolation.
It was independence.
It was always independence.
Right.
The prepared environment, the materials, the teacher's role, they're all just the catalyst, the means to allow children to become, as she put it, self-motivated to reach new levels of understanding.
Okay, so as you reflect on this ultimate goal, independence, let's consider that radical implication for the third plane, for adolescence.
Right.
Montessori actually believed that adolescents, to truly form themselves, should ideally leave the accustomed environment of their family home, go to quieter surroundings, maybe in the country, often to achieve actual economic independence through purposeful work, like on a farm or in a workshop.
A radical departure from typical high school.
Totally. So here's the thought to leave you with. If the formation of the truly independent adult requires this kind of separation, this focus on real-world contribution and achieving economic self-sufficiency during adolescence, what radical social and structural changes would we need to make to modern secondary education today to even begin to fulfill that aim?
That is certainly something worth exploring further, a big question.